Macron under fire for his neutrality on China-U.S. quarrels. Chinese man jailed for scaring chickens to death with lights. Beijing military drill focuses on maritime blockades, attacking enemy ships and Taiwan targets. Brazil's president on China trip, seeking to build new world order. 16,000 people quit their jobs at Chinese home appliance companies.
French President Emmanuel Macron has triggered a fierce debate with his remarks about an independent European stance on Taiwan. As Politico reported on April 9th, the French president said Europe should set itself as a third player in the Taiwan issue, between China and the United States. But he remarked, "The worst thing would be to think that we Europeans must become followers on this topic, and adapt to the American rhythm or a Chinese overreaction." The Wall Street Journal straightforwardly referred to the remarks as unhelpful in an opinion piece. It argued that such viewpoints would weaken US-Japan efforts to deter China in the Western Pacific. US lawmakers would also push to cut European commitments to further rebel against China as a result. The outlet writes, "No one wants a crisis over Taiwan, much less to accelerate one, but preventing one requires a credible deterrent." The WSJ also pointed out the conflicting logic when Europe wanted US intervention against Russian aggression, but now it wishes to stay neutral with Chinese aggression in the Pacific. The opinion piece says, without US weapons and intelligence, Russia would long ago have rolled over Ukraine, and perhaps one or more NATO border countries. An unnamed member of the European Parliament also suggested that the Ukraine war has made it doubtful that Europe would play a third force in the world order. This person told The Guardian, "It's perhaps a bit surprising to stress strategic autonomy now in April 2023, because the world has changed in the last 14 months. Others are questioning the real purpose behind Macron's recent meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing." Norbert Röttgen, a German center-right MP, called it a PR coup and a foreign policy disaster for Europe. He said, with Macron's idea of sovereignty, which he defines in demarcation rather than partnership with the USA, he is increasingly isolating himself in Europe. Mujtaba Rahman, Europe head at the research firm Eurasia Group, tweeted that the French president's comments came out at an inappropriate time. He said, "To make these remarks as Chinese military exercises encircled Taiwan, and just after his state visit to China, was a mistake. It will be interpreted as appeasement of Beijing, and a green light to Chinese aggression."
A Chinese man has been given half-a-year jail term for killing a large flock of chickens belonging to a neighbor he has a vendetta against. According to the Straits Times, the man is identified as Gu from Hengyang County, Hunan Province. He clandestinely broke into a man named Zhong's chicken farm on various nights, which is said to have happened after Zhong, his neighbor, mowed his trees without his consent in April 2022. It remains unclear if this was intentional or otherwise, but Gu's flashlight startled the birds, causing them to trample each other to the death as they crammed into a corner in fear. In the first instance, 460 chickens were found dead in that faction. At the time, Gu was required to pay his neighbor 3,000 yuan or $435 in compensation. The fines only fueled more anger from him, and he repeated the misdeed again, causing the death of 640 more chickens. The court found Gu responsible for the death of 1,100 chickens in total. It ruled on April 4th that he intentionally tried to kill off the birds and sentenced the man to 6 months behind bars with a 1-year probation. Gu is also fined 13,840 yuan or over $2,000, the cost of the 1,100 unfortunate chickens. It is believed that the man's regret for what he did influenced the verdict. On April 8th, the Chinese Communist Party began holding large-scale military exercises in retaliation for Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen's visit to the U.S. On April 10th, the third day of the exercise, CNN reported that the CCP appeared to have performed a simulation exercise of strikes by aircraft carrier-based warplanes in Taiwan. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense reported on April 10th that in 24 hours, the CCP flew 4 J-15 fighter jets into the southeast of the island's air defense identification zone. According to CNN, this is the first time the CCP's J-15s have flown into Taiwan's ADIZ. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense also reports that 11 Chinese Navy vessels are in the waters surrounding Taiwan. According to CCTV, the April 10th exercise focused on maritime blockades and targeted ambush assaults on enemy mooring vessels in the Taiwan Strait, the northwest region, and the southwest and east coast of Taiwan. The CCP's mouthpiece added that China's military had simulated joint precision strikes on key targets on Taiwan Island and the surrounding waters over the weekend. Japan's Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed that it observed during the ongoing drill that 80 aircraft took off and landed on the CCP's Shandong aircraft carrier. Taiwan Defense Ministry spokesperson Sun Lifeng commented on the drill that it had destabilized the region. Sun said, President Tsai's visit became their excuse to conduct exercises, and their actions have severely jeopardized the security of the surrounding region. Brazilian President Lula is due to arrive in China on April 12 for a state visit. Before his departure on April 11th, Lula said he would invite Chinese leader Xi Jinping to visit Brazil to strengthen relations between the two countries. Lula's trip to China comes more than 2 months after he met with U.S. President Joe Biden at the White House. Despite growing tensions between the U.S. and China, Brazil aims to balance relations with its leading trading partner through a pragmatic foreign policy. Lula said that Brazil wanted China to invest in creating new jobs and productive assets in his nation. Lula was scheduled to visit China, Brazil's largest trading partner, in March, but the trip was postponed after he was diagnosed with a mild case of pneumonia. According to a press release from the Brazilian presidency, 2023 marks the 50th anniversary of Brazil's first trade relations with China. The Brazilian government aims to restart relations with China on Lula's third visit there. In 2022, China imported more than $89.7 billion in products from Brazil, especially soybeans and iron ore, and exported nearly $60.7 billion to Brazil, the press release said. Since Lula's first visit to China in 2004, annual trade between the two countries has reached $150.4 billion, an increase of 21 times. Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira said that Lula would also discuss the Ukraine issue with Xi Jinping and propose a Brazilian version of the Russian-Ukrainian war solution. It's thought the solution would produce a group of mediating countries when Lula returns home. However, when Lula met with President Biden, the two sides did not focus on Ukraine. China is using economic and trade cooperation and investment as an inducement to win the political support of countries like Brazil to forge a new order of confrontation with the West. Michael Schuman, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's China Center, a U.S. think tank, said last month that unlike China's reform and opening up, which focused on developing ties with the U.S. and the West, Xi is making a major foreign policy shift in his third term, returning to the past and focusing on relations with developing countries. According to Schuman, Xi is looking at the West in the opposite light. That is, the U.S. and its partners are bent on containing China. The only way for China to achieve the renaissance it seeks is to develop a new foreign policy. That means building a new world order and reorienting its primary efforts away from the West. Recently, 12 listed companies in China's home appliance industry have released their 2022 annual reports. Affected by many adverse factors, 7 listed companies had at least 16,000 resignations last year. According to the annual statistical report data, the net profit attributable to shareholders of the parent company of those mentioned above, 12 listed companies, was about $3 billion, or 20.9 billion yuan, a decrease of 3.91% from the previous year. The China Electronics Information Industry Development Research Institute said that the total retail sales of China's home appliance market were $121 billion, or 835.2 billion yuan last year, a year-on-year decrease of 5.2%. Among the 12 listed companies, 7 saw a year-on-year decline in revenue. Shenkonka A, Yunmi, and Omar Electric fell the most. The financial reports also show that at the end of 2022, 7 companies, including Skyworth Group, Honma Electric, TCL Electronics, Hisense Video, Shenkonka A, Supor, and Joyoung, have a year-on-year decrease in the number of employees. The total number of employees decreased by about 16,400, a year-on-year decline of about 13%. From the end of 2021 to the end of 2022, TCL Electronics has reduced to more than 6,500 staff. Homa Electric, Supor, and Hisense Video's employees have decreased by 1,468, 1,616, and 2,342, respectively. The main reason for the loss is high raw material prices. In 2022, raw material prices remained high due to the impact of the pandemic. In China, the cost of raw materials and components is the main component of the production cost of home appliances.